Welcome back to the deep dive, where we crack open the covers and really dig into the stories behind the stories.
It's great to be diving in again.
Simply reading a book, just following the plot, meeting the characters, well, it's just the beginning.
Absolutely, it's the starting point.
The real magic, the kind of understanding that sticks with you long after you've turned the final page, that comes from peeling back the layers.
Yeah.
It's like staring at a familiar landscape and suddenly realizing there's like an entire geological history hidden right there in the rocks, shaping everything you see.
That's a great analogy. What we often forget, I think, is that literature isn't merely about consuming a narrative, not just passively taking it in.
Right.
Instead, it's a profound, ongoing dialogue, a conversation that spans across centuries and cultures. It mirrors our deepest human experiences, challenges us, and ultimately invites us to see both the world and ourselves in, well, entirely new ways.
It's like a living archive.
Exactly. A living archive of human thought and emotion passed down through generations.
And today, our mission on this deep dive is to hand you, our listener, a powerful toolkit. We want to equip you with the frameworks to understand literature on a far, far deeper level. This isn't about judging a book good or bad, necessarily.
No, it's not about simple judgment.
It's about unlocking its full potential, seeing how it mirrors our own lives, and really getting under its skin to, excavate its true meaning.
Indeed. By exploring different frameworks, different lenses, if you will, we can extract richer, more nuanced insights from any text.
Any text at all.
Yeah. This journey will show you how to transform a casual read into an active, thoughtful engagement, not just with the literary work itself, but with the world it reflects and the world we all live in.
It makes you wonder, how much more can we truly see once we have the right tools in our hands?
That's the key question.
And to guide us, we've meticulously distilled the most vital nuggets from a comprehensive briefing document on literary criticism. This deep dive is custom-tailored to get you not just informed, but genuinely enlightened about the art of deep reading.
Ready to dive in.
So let's unpack this. Okay, so let's kick things off with a fundamental question that might seem obvious, but really isn't when you think about it.
Okay.
What truly elevates a piece of writing into the realm of literature?
The big question.
I mean, we read all sorts of things every single day, emails, news articles, maybe even recipe ingredients. But what makes a novel by Virginia Woolf or a poem by Langston Hughes literature when, say, my grocery list, no matter how eloquent I try to make it, simply isn't?
That's a great starting point because it forces us to consider the intention and the craft behind the words.
Right, the craft.
Our sources point to a few key differentiators. First up, we have aesthetic quality.
Okay.
Literature places a huge emphasis on the deliberate use of language, form, style, and literary devices. Things like metaphor, simile, symbolism.
The tools of the trade.
Exactly. These aren't just pretty embellishments. They work together to create a rich and evocative experience that goes far beyond simply transferring information.
So it's not just what is said, but how.
Precisely. Think about the careful word choice in a poem, or the intricate sentence structure in a classic novel. It's designed to make you feel, to experience, to linger, not just understand the facts.
That makes perfect sense. It's about the how as much as the what. And then there's the imaginative or fictional nature, right?
Yes, that's crucial too. Literature often reimagines or interprets reality, creating entire worlds and characters that may not exist in our physical world.
Even if it's based on real events.
Even then, it's not just reporting them. These fictional constructs, these imagined worlds, are specifically designed to explore universal truths and human experience.
So they let us explore big ideas safely.
In a way, yes. They allow us to step into different lives, different perspectives, and wrestle with big ideas in a safe, yet incredibly profound way. It's a simulation for the soul, almost.
I like that. Simulation for the soul.
Building on that, literature also possesses remarkable emotional and intellectual depth. It doesn't shy away from complexity. It actually, delves into complex human emotions, ideas, and conflicts.
It embraces the messy stuff.
It does. It thrives on ambiguity and nuance, often offering multiple layers of meaning and actively encouraging critical engagement from you, the reader.
So it wants you to think.
Exactly. You finish a truly great piece of literature, and you're often left pondering, debating, feeling its resonance long after the final page. It sticks with you because it challenges your mind and your heart.
And it's this depth, wouldn't you say, that often contributes to its universality and timelessness.
I think that's absolutely right. Truly great literature has this incredible ability to address themes that remain relevant across diverse cultures and eras, regardless of when or where it was written.
Like,
Well, think about themes like love, loss, identity, and the search for meaning. These are fundamental to the human condition.
they don't really change.
No, they don't. Which is why a play written thousands of years ago or a novel from a different continent can still speak powerfully to us today. It maintains its relevance because it taps into something deeply, fundamentally human. Hashtag tag, hashtag B. Why bother critiquing? The vital process of engagement. So, given these distinguishing features, these things that elevate writing to literature, why should we bother with the act of critiquing at all? Why not just enjoy it?
Yeah, why overthink it?
Well, our sources frame it as a vital process that goes beyond simple judgment. It's not about being a literary judge or, giving something a thumbs up or thumbs down.
Okay.
It's about deepening your understanding and connection in a really meaningful way.
How so?
Firstly, it leads to active, thoughtful engagement. When you critique, you're not just passively absorbing the story. You're not just letting it wash over you.
You're leaning in.
Exactly. You're actively evaluating authorial choices, assessing the narrative's effectiveness. You're asking why something was written the way it was, how it achieves its effect, what choices the author made, and why those specific choices.
Getting into the mechanics.
Yes. This active process fosters a much deeper, more intimate connection with the text, moving beyond mere enjoyment to genuine comprehension and appreciation.
And this active engagement then naturally allows for uncovering deeper meanings, I suppose.
Precisely. You start to explore the underlying themes, symbols, and illusions that might not be immediately obvious on a first, more casual read.
The hidden stuff.
Yeah, that's the aha moment we talk about, that sudden flash of insight where a hidden layer of meaning reveals itself, enriching your entire experience of the work.
It's like finding a secret passage you never knew existed in a familiar house.
That's a perfect way to put it. And through this process, we're really exploring universal human experiences.
Okay.
By critically examining how characters grapple with those timeless themes such as love, loss, identity, and morality, we gain a deeper understanding of the shared human condition.
So it connects us.
It absolutely does. This doesn't just make us more astute readers, it fosters empathy and broadens our understanding of ourselves and others. We find common ground with characters and authors separated by centuries, sometimes feeling a profound connection.
What's also incredibly powerful, I think, is how critiquing helps us in reflecting on societal values and norms.
How so?
Well, the briefing notes say literature acts as a mirror of the world, revealing what was valued, what was challenged, and what was taken for granted in a particular society at a specific point in time.
Right, a snapshot of a time and place.
Yeah. And by examining these reflections, we can better understand the evolution of our own values, how society has progressed, maybe how it hasn't, and even how some struggles remain stubbornly persistent.
It provides a historical lens on our collective psyche.
Exactly, showing us where we've come from and perhaps, giving us clues about where we're going. So if we agree that deep reading and critiquing are crucial, how do we do all this effectively? How do we move beyond just an intuitive read, that gut feeling, and start truly analyzing?
That's where literary theory comes in. It's the essential tool for this deep dive, providing the very framework we need.
Okay, so what exactly is literary theory? Is it like a set of rules?
Not exactly rules, more like, well, think of it as a specialized pair of glasses. It's a framework of ideas and principles used to interpret and analyze literature. And each pair, each theory, is designed to highlight different aspects of a text.
Different perspectives.
Precisely. Instead of just relying on gut feeling, it provides a systematic way to approach texts, giving us a structured methodology for extracting deeper meaning. It's like having a mechanic's manual for understanding a complex engine. You know where to look and what to look for.
Got it. And these theories offer incredible enhancements to our reading, right? How do they help?
Oh, immensely. For instance, they excel at revealing hidden meanings.
Like the secret passages we mentioned.
Exactly. Imagine you're reading a classic novel, something you think you know pretty well. Then you apply, say, a feminist lens. Suddenly, what seemed like a straightforward portrayal of a woman's life might reveal layers of patriarchal oppression that were subtly woven into the narrative, shaping her choices and limiting her agency in ways you hadn't even noticed before.
Wow. So it changes your whole view.
It can. It's like a secret code unlocking new perspectives. Beyond just revealing hidden layers, literary theories also excel at providing a systematic approach.
How does that work?
Well, for example, a formalist analysis might focus meticulously on specific elements like the meter in a poem, the rhyme scheme, or the narrative structure. This allows us to understand precisely how the text is constructed and the effect those construction choices have on the reader's experience.
Getting really technical.
Sometimes, yes, but it helps appreciate the craft. How often do you think we read something quickly and miss the deliberate artistry that went into every single word choice?
Oh, constantly. I mean, I definitely do. And then they also powerfully connect text to context. That seems important.
Hugely important. Consider New Historicism, for instance. This approach might uncover the significance of historical moments surrounding a work's creation.
Like the time it was written in.
Exactly. A novel written during a period of, say, political upheaval wouldn't just be seen as a story. It'd be viewed as a direct engagement with, or even a product of, those specific historical forces.
Okay.
It reveals how those forces shape the author's perspective and the reception of the work. It helps us understand the conversation the book was joining in its own time.
Makes sense. But are there downsides? Limitations?
Yes, it's really important to acknowledge that. No single theory is perfect or complete. Applying one lens too rigidly can lead to reductionism, where you overfocus on one aspect and miss the bigger picture.
Tunnel vision.
Kind of.
But that
It can also result in overlooking other perspectives or even dismissing authorial intent entirely, which some find problematic.
So what's the solution?
The real power here, the true comprehensive understanding, often involves adopting multiple perspectives to achieve a more comprehensive and nuanced reading.
Using different glasses.
Exactly. It raises an important question. How do these different lenses interact? And which ones are most fruitful for a given text? And maybe even for your particular understanding or questions.
With that groundwork of what literature is and why we bother to truly unpack it, it feels like time to actually open up our critical toolbox.
Let's do it.
Let's explore some of the different lenses available to us, starting maybe by looking within the text itself.
Sounds like a good plan.
Yeah.
Let's start with the approaches that focus primarily on the words on the page. Okay, our journey into the text's inner world begins with formalism. Both Russian formalism and the later new criticism emphasize the autonomy of the text,
Meaning?
meaning they treat it almost like a self-contained independent entity. The core idea is that the text holds all the meaning within its own linguistic and structural boundaries. We don't necessarily need to look outside it at the author's life or the historical period.
Everything you need is right there.
That's the premise. Russian formalism, for example, really focused on what they called literariness, which are basically the features that distinguish a literary text from other forms of discourse.
What makes it art?
Precisely. What makes a poem poetic or a story-like rather than just a factual report. A key, really fascinating concept here is defamiliarization, or ostrany.
Ostra what now?
Ostrany, it's a Russian term. The profound insight here is that art presents familiar things in an unfamiliar or strange way in order to enhance perception and renew appreciation for them.
Making the familiar strange.
Exactly. Imagine a poet describing rain not simply as falling water, but as, say, the sky weaving silver threads. It's a familiar phenomenon, rain, but that unique description makes you stop and truly see it anew.
Yeah, I get it.
It breaks your automatic everyday response and forces genuine, fresh engagement with the world through language.
That's a powerful idea, disrupting our autopilot. Then we have new criticism, which came a bit later, but shared that similar focus on the text itself, right?
Yes, very much so. It treats the text as an autonomous verbal icon. New criticism really elaborated on the idea of organic unity.
Organic unity.
Yeah, the idea that all internal elements cohere to create a unified, self-contained meaning, like a living organism where every part works together.
How do you find that unity?
Through close reading, meticulously examining form, imagery, symbolism, paradox, irony within the text to see how they all work together seamlessly. You're not looking outside the book. You're diving deep into its internal mechanics, like studying an intricate clockwork.
It's helpful to understand the distinguishing elements between these two, though. They sound similar.
They share the text-centric focus, but there are differences. Russian formalism often emphasizes technical devices for experimental disruption. It's often about how language plays with perception, pushes boundaries. New criticism, on the other hand, tends to seek thematic unity for a more, let's say, conservative search for unified meaning. It's often looking for how all those internal elements serve a central, cohesive message.
Gotcha. Different goals for looking closely.
Right. And the strengths of this text-only focus are undeniable. It brings incredible precision to analysis, forcing critics to engage deeply with the words on the page.
Really getting granular.
Exactly. It also offers potential for universality across cultures because it doesn't rely as heavily on external historical or biographical context, which can vary widely. And of course, it deepens aesthetic appreciation by highlighting the artistry of the language itself. You really get to marvel at the craft.
But there must be limitations.
Oh, absolutely. This approach can sometimes lead to contextual blindness, potentially missing crucial historical influences or the author's biography that might illuminate deeper meanings.
Ignoring the world outside the book.
It can, yes. Its limited scope means it can overlook significant sociopolitical implications embedded in the work. And without external anchors, there's always the risk of subjectivity in interpretation, where different close readers might come to wildly different conclusions without any outside reference points to ground them.
So useful, but maybe not the whole picture.
Precisely. A powerful tool, but one tool among many. Okay, moving from the internal workings of the text to a more abstract but equally fascinating way of looking at it, we encounter structuralism.
Structuralism, okay.
This theory was heavily influenced by Ferdinand de Saussure's work in linguistics, specifically semiotics.
Semiotics, signs.
Exactly. It views language as a system of signs. Each sign has two parts, a signifier, like the sound or written word tree, and a signified, the actual concept of a tree. But the crucial part is that meaning is produced not by some inherent quality of the sign itself.
So tree doesn't inherently mean tree.
Not exactly. Meaning arises through relationships of difference within the system. Tree means tree because it's not bush, flower, or rock. It's defined by what it isn't within the language system.
Wow, okay. That's kind of mind-bending.
It is. The real power here is understanding that meaning isn't absolute, but relational. It's about how words relate to and differ from each other within a larger system.
So how does that apply to literature?
Well, this systemic view creates a stable, predictable field of meaning, theoretically allowing texts to be decoded by analyzing their underlying structures. Structuralists might look for universal patterns or structures in myths, narratives, or even literary genres, like the structure of a quest story, for example.
And it can reveal power structures, too.
Yes, it also helps us understand how language can uphold power structures by organizing meaning through established cultural codes, where certain ways of speaking or certain narratives become dominant, often without us even realizing it.
Okay, I think I'm following. But then comes deconstruction.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting, because in comes deconstruction, championed by Jacques Derrida, which directly challenges the stability of meaning proposed by structuralism.
So it throws a wrench in the works.
You could say that. While structuralism sought a stable system, deconstruction argues that meaning is far more slippery, more elusive. Derrida's key concept, difference spelled with an A, explains that meaning is always deferred, never fully present, and continuously reliant on other signs, making meaning inherently unstable and fluid.
Deferred, meaning pushed off.
Sort of. The meaning of a word or phrase isn't fixed. It constantly points to other words, other meanings, in an endless chain. It's never fully there in the moment, always relying on what it's not and what comes next. Like a word chasing its own tail, you never quite catch the definitive meaning.
Okay, my head hurts a little now. How is that useful?
It's useful because deconstruction particularly excels at critiquing binary oppositions, such as good devil, presence absence, man woman, within texts.
The pairs we take for granted.
Right. It exposes how these seemingly natural pairings often contain hidden hierarchies or contradictions, showing that one term is often subtly privileged over the other, like good over evil. By doing this, it reveals the constructed and often contradictory nature of meaning in literary works, suggesting that texts can often undermine their own stated intentions, revealing more than the author consciously intended, perhaps. It's like finding the hidden seams in a perfectly tailored garment, showing how it was put together, and maybe where it doesn't quite hold.
So if we look at their contrasting views on language and reality.
In a nutshell, structuralism sees language as a self-contained system, but a relatively consistent one through which we perceive structure. Deconstruction, on the other hand, views language as inherently unstable, incapable of fully capturing reality.
Language is always slipping away.
That's the idea. It suggests that language is always moving, always eluding complete grasp, leaving us in a constant state of interpretation, questioning the foundations of meaning itself.
It forces us to question everything we think we know about meaning. Heavy stuff.
Definitely thought-provoking.
So far, we've largely focused on the text's internal mechanics and its linguistic structure. But sometimes the meaning isn't just in the text itself, right?
Absolutely not.
Sometimes it's profoundly shaped by how we, the readers, interact with it, or maybe even the hidden depths of the author's or character's minds.
Yes, let's pivot to those more human-centric lenses.
Okay, first up, we have reader response criticism. Its core idea sounds really powerful. It emphasizes the reader's active role in constructing a text's meaning.
It really is a shift in focus.
Yeah.
This approach asserts that meaning emerges from the reader's interaction with the text, not solely from the author's intent.
So my reading is just as important as what the author meant.
In this view, yes.
Yeah.
Your experiences, your background, your cultural context, your moment in time, all of these contribute significantly to how you understand and interpret a story.
This directly challenges authorial intent as the sole source of meaning, then.
It does. Reader response critics argued that interpretations naturally vary based on each reader's personal experience, beliefs, and expectations.
That makes sense. Think about reading a book when you're young versus rereading it years later after you've lived a bit, gained more experience.
Exactly. The text hasn't changed, but your interpretation likely has, precisely because you, the reader, have changed. The meaning is created in that interaction.
So how does the theory explain this? Are there key concepts?
Yes, there are several key concepts. One is textual gaps, which are those ambiguities or omissions in a narrative, things left unsaid that readers inevitably fill with their own interpretations.
The author leaves space for you.
Deliberately or not, yes. Another concept is the implied reader. This is the hypothetical reader whom the text seems to address, the kind of audience the author might have had in mind, or the one the text seems to invite through its style, its assumptions, its language.
Like who the book feels like it's talking to.
Kind of, yes. And then there are interpretive communities. These are essentially groups of readers who share similar interpretive strategies, assumptions, and beliefs. Think about how students in a literature class might read a book differently than, say, members of a specific online fan community.
They bring different expectations and tools.
Right. These communities shape how certain texts are understood within a particular culture or academic discipline.
What's truly significant here feels like the power shift this approach enables.
I agree. It fundamentally shifts power from the author to the audience, making readers co-creators of the text's significance.
Which leads to?
It leads to a kind of democratization of literary interpretation, where individual experiences and subjective understandings are valued, moving away from the idea of a single authoritative reading dictated by the author or critic.
Have you ever reread a book and found yourself having a completely different interpretation than you did years ago?
Oh, absolutely. It happens all the time. Sometimes it's like reading a whole new book.
And that's the power of this lens, isn't it? It validates that personal connection, that evolution of understanding.
It really does. Now let's delve into the fascinating, sometimes controversial world of psychoanalytic literary theory.
Okay, Freud and company.
Exactly. This theory is deeply influenced by Sigmund Freud's concepts of the unconscious, repression, and symbolism. It takes ideas about the human mind and applies them to literature.
How does that application work?
Well, it analyzes literature to uncover the unconscious desires, repressed conflicts, and psychological motivations of characters. Think about Hamlet's delay, for example. A psychoanalytic reading might explore unconscious reasons for his inaction.
Looking for hidden motive.
Yes, and often interpreting symbolism and narrative patterns as clues to those hidden depths. A recurring image, a slip of the tongue, a character's strange dream. These might all be seen as significant.
Does it also look at the author's mind?
It certainly can. Psychoanalytic criticism often explores unconscious influences from the author. It might interpret symbols and recurring motifs as expressions of the author's unconscious mind, potentially revealing deeper psychological truths that even the author might not have consciously intended or been aware of.
So the author's own issues might sneak into the text.
That's one way it's often interpreted, yes. It aims to unearth the hidden psychological currents flowing beneath the surface of the narrative.
How does this differ from something like, say, eco-criticism, which we'll get to? They both look for underlying causes.
Good question. While both might look for hidden influences, the distinction is clear. Psychoanalytic theory primarily locates causality within the human psyche and its internal conflicts, desires, fears, traumas. Eco-criticism, as we'll see, locates causality more in the relationship between humans and the external environment. Different focus entirely.
Got it. Mind versus nature, in a way.
Simplified, but yes, that's a useful starting point.
Okay, so we've explored the text's inner workings, the reader's role, and the psychological dimensions. Now let's shift our gaze outward to how literature is inextricably linked to the world around it, society, culture, history, power structures.
And even the environment itself. These contextual lenses are crucial.
Let's start with one that looks at power and economics, Marxist literary theory.
Right. Marxist literary theory has its foundation firmly rooted in Karl Marx's ideas, particularly concerning class struggle and material conditions.
So economics and society.
Exactly. It fundamentally views literature not as some timeless autonomous creation, but as a product of socioeconomic systems and power dynamics.
A reflection of the economy it came from.
More than just a reflection, it actively participates. Marxist criticism analyzes how texts reflect, reinforce, or critique the material conditions and ideological struggles of a society.
Ideology meaning.
The sort of shared beliefs, values, and assumptions of a given class or society, often the ones that uphold the dominant power structure. Marxist critics work to expose hidden class structures and economic exploitation that might be embedded within a story, even if it's not obviously about money.
So the author's own background matters here.
Definitely. The role of the author's context, their social and economic position, is seen as playing a significant role in shaping the ideological message of a text, consciously or unconsciously.
Has this theory evolved?
Oh, yes. Later theorists built on Marx, Georg Lukács, for instance, focused heavily on how literature represents the ideological struggles of classes. And Terry Eagleton famously argued that literature both reproduces and implicitly critiques dominant ideologies, even against the author's conscious intent. The text can sometimes reveal more than the author planned.
So a novel might seem to support the status quo, but actually contain the seeds of its critique.
That's a key idea in some strands of Marxist criticism, yes. It looks for those tensions and contradictions related to class and economy.
Okay, let's turn our attention now to feminist literary theory, which feels incredibly relevant and has really reshaped how we read, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Its groundwork was firmly established by thinkers like Simone de Beauvoir, whose book The Second Sex critically established gender as a social construct.
Meaning not biological destiny.
Precisely. And explored women's historical positioning as the other, often defined in relation to men, rather than as autonomous individuals with their own agency.
So what are the key concepts we should look for when using this lens?
Several are crucial. Patriarchy is central, referring to the social system where men hold primary power and predominate in roles of political leadership, moral authority, social privilege, and control of property. It's a framework often being analyzed or critiqued.
Okay.
Then there's the male gaze, a concept explaining how female characters are often presented in literature and art primarily as objects of desire or spectacle for a male viewer, rather than as subjects with their own rich internal lives and perspectives.
Seen through a male lens.
Essentially, yes. And fundamentally, the idea of gender as a social construct means that gender roles and identities, what society expects of men and women, are socially and culturally constructed, not inherent biological truths. This highlights how society shapes these roles and how literature reflects or challenges that.
So feminist theory uses these concepts for a critique of representation.
Exactly. It critiques the representation of female characters and the reinforcement of gender stereotypes.
Yeah.
It exposes how literature portrays gender roles, challenges patriarchal structures, and explores the experiences of women.
Does it find subtle things too?
Oh, definitely. This can reveal both explicit and implicit forms of patriarchal influence on narrative and structure, showing how even subtle word choices, plot conventions, or character arcs can reinforce gender inequalities, sometimes without the author even consciously intending to.
It also examines female agency and voice, right? How much power female characters have.
Yes, absolutely. This theory critiques the representation of women's agency and autonomy in literature, looking at whether female characters are truly active agents in their own lives or merely passive recipients of fate defined by the men around them.
And why does that matter?
By doing so, it reveals biases or stereotypes impacting readers' perceptions of gender, both in the text and potentially in the real world. It challenges us to see where female voices have been suppressed, misrepresented, or simply ignored.
And like Marxist theory, it's evolved. I know intersectionality is a huge part of it now.
Incredibly important. Feminist theory has evolved significantly, moving from an initial focus perhaps more squarely on critiquing patriarchal structures to a broader exploration of identity, sexuality, and power. And intersectionality, a term coined by scholar Kimberly Crenshaw, is vital here.
What does it add?
This framework addresses the overlapping influences of race, class, gender, sexuality, disability, and other identity markers. It recognizes that a person's experience isn't just shaped by one aspect of their identity. For instance, a Black woman experiences a unique form of discrimination that cannot be understood by simply adding together racism and sexism.
They combine in unique ways.
Exactly. It acknowledges that these intersecting identities create unique experiences of discrimination and privilege. It's a vital reminder that identity is never just one thing, and oppression often works on multiple levels simultaneously. Carrying on with these crucial frameworks that reveal how societal structures impact literature, we arrive at African American Black studies criticism.
Which feels connected to intersectionality in some ways.
It is, deeply. The real power of this field lies in its role as an interdisciplinary field. It rigorously examines literature from the perspective of Black identity, culture, and history, actively seeking to correct the historical exclusion and misrepresentation of Black people in the literary canon.
Reclaiming narratives.
Precisely. For centuries, these voices were marginalized, ignored, or stereotyped. This theory works to restore their rightful place, ensuring their stories are heard and understood on their own terms, from their own perspectives.
So it's about centering Black voices.
Fundamentally, it prioritizes texts by Black authors and works that feature Black characters, stories, and cultural traditions, thereby directly challenging the often unconscious Eurocentric bias that historically dominated literary studies.
Asking different questions.
Yes. It asks not just what a text means, but whose story is being told, how it's being told from a Black perspective, acknowledging the unique cultural and historical experiences that shape that perspective.
What are some of the key themes this lens focuses on?
They are often profound and historically significant. Things like the legacy of slavery, the struggle for freedom and civil rights, the challenges of racial identity, and the importance of community and cultural nationalism.
And challenging stereotypes.
Definitely. It meticulously analyzes how writers represent and subvert stereotypes, revealing the complex ways Black identity is constructed, negotiated, and resisted in literature. It's about reclaiming narrative power and defining oneself.
Does it look at the style of writing too, the language and form?
Oh, absolutely. That's a critical aspect. It pays particular attention to Black vernacular English, oral traditions, storytelling techniques, and the use of music forms like blues and jazz in literary structure.
These aren't just stylistic choices then.
No, they are seen as much more than that. They're often viewed as a way of asserting a unique cultural identity and resisting the dominant linguistic and literary norms of the prevailing white culture. The very sound and rhythm of the language become an act of self-definition, cultural assertion, and resistance.
And intersectionality comes into play here too.
Crucially, it directly addresses the intersection of race, class, and gender in shaping a character's experiences and choices, recognizing that the experience of Black identity is never monolithic. These layers combine to create unique lived realities that must be acknowledged in literary analysis.
When you read a text through this lens, what's often the most surprising or powerful thing you discover?
For me, it's often the incredible resilience and inventiveness, both in the stories told and in the language used. How language is bent, reshaped, infused with music and oral traditions to tell stories that the dominant culture might not even have had the words for. It's truly inspiring and often reveals layers completely missed by other approaches. Now, let's circle back slightly and explore new historicism and cultural criticism in a bit more depth. We touched on it earlier, but it connects well here. It views literature as deeply intertwined with its historical moment.
Right, not separate from history.
Not at all. This approach is profoundly shaped by Michel Foucault's theories on diffuse power and discourse. Remember discourse? Those systems of thought and language that produce knowledge and shape how we understand the world.
Power being everywhere, not just at the top.
Exactly. Foucault argued power is not centralized, but diffuse, operating through networks of social practices, institutions, and discourses. It's woven into the fabric of society, influencing what we say, think, and even how we perceive reality.
So how does that connect to literature?
New historicism views literature as deeply embedded in its historical and cultural contexts, emphasizing the interplay between texts and the socio-political forces of their time. A literary work isn't just about a historical period, it's a part of that period, both reflecting and being shaped by it.
Like that tree analogy you used, you need the soil and climate.
Precisely. It's trying to understand the entire ecosystem a text grew in. This means it invites critics to consider unwritten history, those events, ideologies, and cultural practices not explicitly mentioned in the text, but implicit in its creation and reception.
Things everyone at the time just knew.
Sort of. For example, a novel about family life in Victorian England might not explicitly mention the British Empire's vast reach, but new historicists would argue that the empire's economic and cultural influence is nonetheless implicit in its creation and reception. Understanding that background context is seen as essential for understanding a work's impact on its original audience.
It fills in the background noise of an era.
A very good way to put it. It fundamentally challenges the notion of a text as an isolated work, separate from the world. It reveals the dynamic influence of contemporary sociopolitical forces on literature, showing how the historical moment permeates the very fabric of the text, from its themes and characters to its language and form.
So it sees literature as active in history, reflecting or shaping norms.
Yes, that's key. This theory uncovers how literature reinforces, subverts, or questions dominant ideologies of its time, assigning a dynamic role to literature, seeing it as both a reflector and a shaper of cultural norms and power dynamics.
So literature isn't just a passive observer of history, it's an active participant in the conversation of its time.
That's the core idea. It raises that important question again. Can we ever truly understand a text without understanding the specific historical conversation it's joining? New historicism would argue probably not fully.
Okay, now for a lens that feels increasingly urgent and relevant today, eco-criticism. This one looks at literature through the environment, right?
Exactly. It's a field that examines the relationship between literature and the physical environment. Its core principles often involve challenging anthropocentrism.
The human-centered worldview.
Right, the idea that humans are the center of everything. Eco-criticism tries to view nature as an active participant, not just a passive setting. It explores environmental ethics within texts and foregrounds, ecological interconnectedness, how everything is linked.
So it challenges the idea of passive nature we often see in books.
Definitely. It challenges traditional representations of nature as a passive backdrop in literature, arguing that nature is often treated merely as scenery for human drama. Eco-critics work to reveal nature as a complex cultural and ideological construct in itself, asking how our ideas about nature are shaped by culture and reflected in literature.
And it looks at environmental ethics.
Yes, it explores a text's environmental ethics or critique its anthropocentric perspective. Does a story promote stewardship or exploitation? Does it question human dominance over nature? This can provide insights into the human impact on the environment, as depicted in or ignored by literature across different eras.
That feels like it connects strongly with postcolonial theory, which we touched on with Edgeby.
Absolutely. There's a strong intersection with postcolonial theory. Eco-criticism often examines the exploitation of land and resources as intrinsically linked to colonial oppression.
How so?
It highlights environmental injustice as a legacy of colonialism, showing how power dynamics shape both human and ecological relationships, particularly impacting indigenous communities whose connection to the land was often severed or exploited by colonizers. Land grabbing, resource extraction, these are both environmental and colonial issues.
A double oppression, almost.
In many cases, yes. And looking forward, eco-criticism actively engages with contemporary climate change literature, CLIFI. It suggests a crucial role for narrative in shaping public perceptions of environmental crises and prompting action.
Stories shaping how we see the climate crisis.
Exactly. Yeah. How we tell the story of our relationship with the planet matters immensely, and eco-criticism helps us analyze those narratives. Finally, let's bring in a vital global perspective, moving beyond primarily Western frameworks with Asian literary theory. This isn't one single theory, of course, but encompasses diverse approaches rooted in various Asian cultures and philosophies.
Okay, what's the common thread?
A fundamental emphasis on context. These approaches generally emphasize the crucial importance of historical, philosophical, and cultural context in the interpretation of texts, perhaps even more strongly than some Western theories do. The specific cultural soil is paramount.
And there's a strong philosophical intertwining.
Very much so. Interpretation is often deeply intertwined with major philosophical and religious traditions like Confucianism, Buddhism, or Taoism, which profoundly influence themes related to human relationships, the natural world, or morality in literature.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. A reading influenced by Confucianism might emphasize themes of filial piety, duty, social harmony, and look for virtuous heroes who uphold social order.
Okay.
A Buddhist lens might focus on impermanence, suffering, detachment, compassion, and karma. Nature, in this view, is often seen as a source of spiritual wisdom, not just a resource. And a Taoist perspective might promote harmony with the Tao, the way, spontaneity, simplicity, and critique artificial rules and conventions. Nature here is often the ultimate source of truth and beauty, something to align with, not control.
So these philosophical backgrounds shape the very questions asked of a text.
Exactly. And this inherently leads to a challenge to Western dominance in literary studies. Some scholars deliberately reinterpret Western texts through an Asian lens. Imagine reading Homer's Odyssey, for example, focusing not just on Odysseus's individual heroism, but through themes of communal responsibility, or the Buddhist idea of impermanence.
That would be different.
It certainly challenges Eurocentric assumptions about what's important in a story. Of course, there are globalization challenges and benefits.
What's such as?
Challenges include maintaining cultural authenticity when discussing texts using concepts alien to their origin,
Right.
and the potential loss of nuance in philosophical frameworks during translation or cross-cultural discussion.
But the benefit.
The benefits include broader readership and cultural exchange, fostering understanding across cultures, and importantly, challenging Western dominance by showing the richness and validity of other interpretive traditions. It reminds us that literature, and how we understand it, is truly global.
Okay, wow, that's an incredible toolkit of theories we've just unpacked. My head is spinning a bit, but in a good way.
It's a lot to take in, but seeing them in action makes it clearer.
Exactly. So let's do that. Let's unpack this with some real-world examples. Now that we have our toolkit, let's see these theories illuminate some specific works. Let's start with Alice Walker's brilliant short story, Everyday Use. We touched on it briefly, but it so perfectly explores heritage and cultural identity, right?
It really does. The story powerfully highlights the contrasting perspectives of Dee and Maggie on their family's heritage, perspectives that reflect different views of cultural identity. It's ideal for an African-American studies lens, but also brings in aspects of cultural criticism.
Tell us about Dee's perspective first. Dee, who calls herself Wanero.
Right. Dewanguro views her heritage primarily as a curated, aesthetic object for display. She represents a certain kind of modern intellectualized cultural pride, focusing on symbolic artifacts, like the family quilt, as items to be appreciated for their historical significance, almost like museum pieces to be preserved behind glass.
But Walker seems to critique that.
Yes, subtly. There's a sense of superficial engagement with identity in DA's approach. She values the idea of heritage, the symbols, but perhaps misses its living, functional essence. Applying a formalist lens, you can see how Walker uses the narrative structure, the dialogue, and the contrasting descriptions of the sisters to underscore this tension.
And Maggie's view is the complete opposite.
Starkly different, yes. Maggie sees heritage as a living, practical tradition rooted in daily life and continuity. She values the family objects, especially those handmade quilts, for their utility and emotional significance. For Maggie, the quilts aren't just beautiful artifacts. They're meant to be used to provide warmth, to continue a tangible connection to the hands that made them, the lives they were part of.
So what's Walker's message here, through that contrast?
Through an African-American studies lens, the message seems clear. True heritage is not about commodifying or displaying artifacts, but about honoring the lived experiences and resilience of ancestors through practical use and continuity. It's about passing down skills, memories, and values, not just preserving objects detached from life.
The quilt itself becomes a huge symbol, doesn't it? A metaphor.
Absolutely. It's the central symbol for the broader theme of tradition versus modernity, or perhaps lived versus curated heritage. For Mama and Maggie, it represents a living, practical connection to family history, stitched with memories and real-world utility. But for Dee, it embodies modernity, where heritage is curated for cultural or intellectual value, often divorced from its origins.
It's a powerful distinction, reminding us that authenticity often lies in the everyday lived experience, not just in the display.
A really resonant story for exploring those ideas. Okay, next, let's shift gears completely and turn to Mark Twain's provocative short piece, Thoughts of God.
Twain, always ready to stir things up.
Indeed. What's particularly illuminating here is how Twain employs satire and critique of religion. He uses biting satire and a seemingly logical but ultimately absurd line of reasoning to critique the concept of a benevolent and omnipotent God as portrayed by organized religion.
How does he do that?
His strategy often uses the creation of the fly as a point of contention, humorously, almost blasphemously, questioning why an all-powerful, all-good deity would bother creating such an irritating, seemingly pointless creature. This text is just begging for a deconstruction lens.
Picking at the inconsistencies.
Precisely. Twain masterfully employs irony. He uses situational irony by presenting a God who is petty, vengeful, and preoccupied with human trivialities, like whether Adam and Eve wore fig leaves correctly. This effectively exposes the absurdity of anthropomorphic religious dogma.
Anthropomorphic meaning.
Making God in man's image. If God is made in man's image, Twain implies, then all of man's flaws, pettiness, vanity, irrationality get projected onto the divine. This leads to inconsistencies in religious dogma that Twain delighted in poking holes in. He's deconstructing the very idea of a perfectly consistent, benevolent God by highlighting its internal contradictions.
So it's a critique of anthropomorphism itself.
A very sharp one. It highlights Twain's belief, or at least the belief expressed in this piece, that religious concepts are human constructs, reflecting cultural biases rather than universal truths. He suggests we create God in our own image, rather than the other way around.
How does a reader response lens work here?
Well, this piece directly forces you, the reader, to confront your own preconceived notions of divinity. It pushes you to question what you've been taught or what you assume, regardless of your personal beliefs. It's designed to provoke a reaction.
The philosophical outcome of this piece, then, isn't just humor.
Not at all. It's a challenge to blind faith and an encouragement to embrace rational inquiry over dogmatic belief. Twain wasn't just being funny for the sake of it. He was urging his readers to think critically, even about the most deeply held beliefs.
A great example of how literature can disrupt assumptions and make you uncomfortable in a productive way.
Exactly. Satire as a tool for critical thinking.
Okay, let's move to nonfiction. With George Orwell's essay, Reflections on Gandhi. This one seems complex, not just praise or criticism.
It's incredibly nuanced. Orwell presents Gandhi's commitment to moral purity with both admiration and skepticism. It's a fascinating tightrope walk. A new historicist reading would place this essay firmly in the context of post-WWII Britain, grappling with the decline of empire and the rise of figures like Gandhi.
So where does the admiration come from?
Orwell clearly admires Gandhi's ethical rigor and personal integrity, his almost superhuman, unwavering commitment to nonviolence, ahimsa, and truth, satyagraha. There's a respect for the sheer force of Gandhi's personal conviction.
But the skepticism?
Orwell seriously questions the practicality and value of Gandhi's principles in a modern political context, especially against totalitarian regimes like those Orwell had witnessed. He argues nonviolence is situationally limited and perhaps wouldn't have worked against, say, the Nazis.
He also critiques Gandhi's personal life.
Yes, he critiques Gandhi's extreme asceticism, his vows of poverty and chastity, seeing it as somewhat alienating and perhaps impractical, even inhuman, for ordinary people to emulate.
So Orwell distinguishes between public figure versus personal beliefs.
Very clearly, he separates Gandhi as a public figure, a canny, strategic political leader who used his image effectively from his personal beliefs, which were rooted in extreme asceticism and spiritual principles that Orwell found admirable but ultimately unrelatable and perhaps politically naive in certain contexts.
What does this reveal about Orwell's view of public service or leadership?
It suggests Orwell believed pragmatism and adaptability are essential in leadership. He seems to value effective action over personal purity, even while respecting the purity itself. It's a very Orwellian tension between ideals and methy reality. A psychoanalytic lens might even probe Orwell's own complex feelings about authority and sainthood.
A deeply thoughtful, if critical, engagement.
Definitely. Not hero worship, not dismissal, but a wrestling with a complex legacy. Let's return to poetry now, with Langston Hughes' incredibly powerful poem, Harlem, A Dream Deferred. We touched on it, but let's dive deeper into its impact.
Such a resonant poem.
It uses vivid sensory imagery to explore the emotional and social consequences of unfulfilled dreams, particularly within the African-American experience. This poem is just a masterclass in imagery, making it perfect for formalist analysis, alongside an essential African-American studies lens.
Let's break down that imagery. It's unforgettable. Hughes asks, what happens to a dream deferred, and then offers these possibilities?
Right. Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? That image suggests desiccation, withering, a loss of its original life and vibrancy, utter depletion.
Then, or fester like a sore, and then run.
That one implies pain, infection, a wound that grows worse, becoming toxic, maybe spreading, something actively harmful.
Does it stink like rotten meat?
Ugh, that's visceral. It signifies decay, corruption, something that turns foul and unbearable, poisoning the air around it.
Or the opposite, maybe. Or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet.
That speaks perhaps to repression, a kind of cloying falseness that hides a bitter reality beneath, a forced, unnatural sweetness covering something rotten,
Maybe it just sags like a heavy load.
evoking exhaustion, a crushing burden that just weighs you down, making movement impossible, the sheer dead weight of disappointment.
And all these disturbing images build to that final chilling line. Or does it explode?
Yeah, that suggests a violent eruption, sudden release, rebellion, the potential for social unrest when deeply held aspirations are repeatedly denied by an unjust system.
The poem's structure uses rhetorical questions, right?
Yes, this series of rhetorical questions is crucial. It creates a speculative, urgent tone that effectively engages the reader, forcing you to confront these unsettling possibilities. It's not giving answers, it's demanding you consider the question.
From a new historicist perspective, this directly addresses the context of Harlem in the mid-20th century.
Absolutely. It speaks directly to the systemic oppression and racial injustice faced by African Americans, making the deferred dream a collective experience of a marginalized community, born from that specific historical reality.
So it's more than just personal disappointment, it's potent social commentary.
Immensely potent. It's a commentary on the consequences of systemic oppression within the African American experience. It serves as a stark warning of profound emotional frustration, collective anguish, societal stagnation, and the potential for social unrest or rebellion when dreams are continually blocked by injustice.
A call to attention, a poetic prophecy almost, that still resonates so powerfully today.
Sadly, yes. Its power hasn't diminished.
Okay, from the explosive power of deferred dreams, let's move to the quieter yet equally profound challenge found in Virginia Woolf's short story, The Legacy.
Ah, Woolf. Excellent choice. Here, the discovery of Angela's diary serves as a brilliant narrative device.
Yes, so.
It functions to unveil the hidden complexities of her marriage and her inner identity, exposing the disparity between her public persona and private reality. This story is incredibly rich ground for feminist literary theory and also reader response criticism.
So the diary reveals the truth about her marriage.
Yes. Through her private writings, the true nature of her marriage to the politician Gilbert Clarendon is revealed, one characterized by emotional distance, disillusionment, and a sense of being misunderstood or unseen by him.
And it hints at more.
It subtly hints at her secret admiration for and possible relationship with BM, a radical figure mentioned in the diary. This suggests a vibrant inner world, perhaps even a secret life, entirely separate from her husband's narrow perception of her. A feminist lens immediately highlights how Angela's public role as a supportive political wife was constrained by patriarchal expectations, making her private thoughts a form of subversive resistance.
The diary also reveals her true identity, beyond being just Gilbert's wife.
Exactly. It exposes her suppressed desires, intellectual engagement with social issues, her thoughts on causes BM championed. All this contrasts sharply with the passive, ornamental image Gilbert projects onto her. He genuinely believed he knew her completely, saw her as simple and content.
But the diary shows a complex inner life he was utterly blind to.
Utterly. It's a powerful example of the male gaze at work within a marriage, where Gilbert defines Angela based on his own needs and assumptions, not her reality.
And this diary is her legacy, discovered after her death. It's a kind of posthumous communication.
Yes, and a powerful act of defiance because of that. It explicitly challenges Gilbert Clarendon's patriarchal perceptions from beyond the grave. It forces him, finally, to confront his self-absorption and patriarchal blindness. The legacy isn't just her money, it's the shattering of his self-delusion about her and about himself.
How does reader response work here? We, the readers, discover the diary alongside Gilbert.
Right. Encountering Angela's diary entries creates a unique sense of intimacy and discovery for you, the reader. You become complicit and uncover the truth she couldn't perhaps speak fully aloud in life, and you witness Gilbert's dawning, horrified realization. Your reaction to his reaction becomes part of the experience.
This story brilliantly embodies feminist themes, then.
Clearly, it critiques the patriarchal structures that force women like Angela to maintain a facade of contentment while suppressing their inner turmoil, their intellectual lives, their desires. It reflects broader feminist themes of autonomy and suppression, highlighting the profound personal cost of living under a male gaze that limits and defines a woman's entire existence.
A quiet story with a very sharp edge.
Classic Woolf. Let's stay with poetry, but shift to William Butler Yeats and his famous poem, A Prayer for My Daughter, written shortly after World War I and during the Irish War of Independence.
A time of great turmoil. How does that context play in?
Hugely. The poem reveals Yeats grappling with traditional virtues versus modern concerns. He balances his desire for his daughter Anne to embody traditional virtues with anxieties about the modern world's instability. This makes it ripe for new historicism, connecting it directly to the post-war revolutionary Irish context.
What are the traditional virtues he hopes for?
He prays for qualities like courtesy, kindness, and innocence. He wishes her beauty, but not the kind that makes women vain or disrupts others' lives. He hopes she'll be like a flourishing hidden tree, symbolizing rootedness in tradition, modesty, and domestic stability, sheltered from the storms.
And the modern concerns he fears.
He expresses fears of anarchy and the blood-dimmed tide being loosed upon the world, clear references to the violence and upheaval of the time, post-WWI, Irish War of Independence. He explicitly associates modernity with intellectual fanaticism, political violence, and the erosion of cultural traditions, particularly the aristocratic traditions he valued.
The symbolism of the storm outside his window is powerful, too.
Yes, the storm raging as he holds his sleeping daughter is a powerful symbol of the turbulent and destructive forces of the modern world, representing both literal political violence and cultural upheaval, and perhaps a kind of inner intellectual turmoil he associates with modern hatreds.
So what does this reveal about Yeats' views on cultural change?
It definitely reveals his skepticism of rapid cultural change and a certain nostalgia for a pre-modern hierarchical society associated with aristocratic grace and ceremony. He fears the passionate intensity and hatreds of mass movements. A feminist reading might critique his desire for his daughter to be primarily characterized by innocence and beauty, fitting traditional roles rather than intellectual or political engagement.
It's a father's anxious prayer, but also a political and cultural statement about his fears for the future.
Very much so. Deeply personal, yet deeply embedded in its historical moment.
Let's take a step back in time now to the Romantics with William Wordsworth's The Solitary Reaper. This feels like a classic eco-criticism text, maybe.
It certainly embodies key romantic ideals about nature, which eco-criticism often engages with. The poem celebrates nature as a source of inspiration, emotion, and transcendence. And yes, the specific landscape contributes significantly to the poem's exploration of solitude, beauty, and the sublime.
How does the setting emphasize solitude?
The poem is set in the Scottish Highlands, a remote highland setting, which underscores the reaper's solitude as she sings alone in the field. But Wordsworth portrays this solitude as not lonely, but transcendent, something powerful and self-contained.
And beauty, her song is central.
Yes, her song is presented as a form of natural beauty, untainted by urban artifice or formal training. It embodies an organic, unpolished beauty that deeply moves the speaker, even though he doesn't understand the words. Nature and this natural human expression become intertwined.
You mentioned the sublime. Where does that come in?
The combination of the vast solitary landscape and the song's unknowable meaning evokes the sublime, a key romantic concept of awe-inspiring vastness or mystery that transcends rational understanding. The experience is overwhelming, almost spiritual.
Wordsworth uses auditory imagery versus silence really effectively, too.
He does. He contrasts the vibrant auditory imagery of the Reaper song, comparing it favorably to the nightingale and the cuckoo bird, with the surrounding silence of the valley. This contrast intensifies the song's captivating power and mysterious quality.
The poem is also about memory and fleeting beauty, isn't it? He carries the song away.
Absolutely. It explores the theme of memory, especially how we hold on to moments of profound, fleeting beauty. The speaker states, "The music in my heart I bore, long after it was heard no more." This encapsulates a very romantic view of memory and art's ability to preserve moments of beauty and emotional intensity, making them internal and lasting.
What about the fact he doesn't understand the language, the unknown language?
That's crucial. The song is likely in Gaelic, which the speaker doesn't understand. This incomprehensible language actually enhances the effect. It creates mystery and universality, freeing the song from specific literal meaning. It allows the speaker and the reader to project his own emotional interpretations onto, maybe it's about old, unhappy, far-off things, or maybe just some natural sorrow, loss, or pain. It connects the specific moment to universal feelings of melancholy and wonder.
So the lack of understanding paradoxically makes it more meaningful in a way.
For Wordsworth's romantic sensibility, yes. It becomes pure emotion, pure sound, directly impacting the soul. Let's travel now to Nepal and explore Parijat's groundbreaking novel Blue Mimosa, or Shirisha Ko Fool. This novel powerfully depicts isolation and alienation,
How does it do that?
primarily through the protagonist, Suagbir, and his fractured relationships and nihilistic worldview. He's a deeply alienated character.
Why is he like that?
His relationships are strained. Suagbir is emotionally detached, largely due to past trauma as a Gurkha soldier fighting in foreign wars, particularly Malaya. This trauma haunts him. His worldview is consequently steeped in existential despair, seeing life as meaningless and society as hypocritical. This existential angst makes it a fascinating text for comparison with Western existentialist literature, but deeply rooted in its specific context.
And that sociocultural setting is important, 1960s Nepal.
Absolutely crucial. These themes of alienation and despair mirror the larger sociocultural setting of 1960s Nepal, which was a period of significant political and social disillusionment following the establishment of the panchayat system. There was also a growing clash of traditional Nepali values and modern Western-influenced intellectualism, which the novel captures. A new historicist reading is essential here.
What about the female characters, like Sumnima? Does it touch on women's agency?
Yes, significantly. Sumnima, the woman Sukhbir becomes involved with, embodies the struggles of women in 1960s Nepal. She faces restrictive patriarchal norms, traditional expectations, and limited agency in her own life, creating a parallel exploration of confinement and societal pressure. A feminist lens reveals the constraints placed specifically on women within this patriarchal context.
And the title, The Symbolism of the Blue Mimosa Flower.
The Shirisha flower, the blue mimosa, is known for its delicate, fleeting beauty. In the novel, it symbolizes the characters' fragile emotional states, their brief moments of connection or hope, and ultimately, the transient nature of hope itself in their bleak world. It's a poignant, recurring image.
So, a novel deeply reflecting a specific time and place, but with universal themes of trauma and disillusionment.
Exactly, a landmark of Nepali literature that resonates far beyond its borders.
Okay, let's jump to contemporary speculative fiction with Lauren Buke's Zoo City. This one uses urban fantasy elements to tackle some heavy themes, right?
It absolutely does. It uses those elements, particularly the central concept of being animaled, as a complex metaphor for identity, trauma, and society's judgments on past actions. It's a great example of genre fiction doing serious thematic work, perfect for cultural criticism and maybe even psychoanalytic ideas about guilt.
Explain the animal condition. What does it represent?
In the novel's world, certain individuals who have committed crimes or carry immense guilt manifest animal companions their animal. These aren't just pets. They're physically and psychically linked. It symbolizes identity by externalizing inner selves, or perhaps hidden guilt. It also embodies trauma's inescapability, as the animal is a constant, visible reminder of the past.
And how does it relate to society's judgments?
The animaled are heavily stigmatized and relegated to a slum area called Zoo City. They face discrimination and prejudice. This mirrors real-world social inequalities and how society often marginalizes those deemed criminal or other.
The setting in Johannesburg is significant, too.
Usually. Buchs uses the gritty, vibrant, divided city of Johannesburg to reflect the socio-political issues of post-apartheid South Africa, highlighting persistent racial and economic inequalities that linger in the urban landscape. The marginalization of the animal echoes other forms of social division. A post-colonial lens could even explore the lingering effects of apartheid structures.
Is there any hope, any path to redemption?
Yes, interestingly, the condition isn't just a punishment. The animaled often gain a psychic ability called shavi. Some characters use their shavi to reclaim agency, finding purpose, or even a way to atone. So the very mark of their guilt can also become a source of power or potential redemption.
A really inventive way to explore complex social issues through a fantasy lens.
Exactly. It shows how genre can be a powerful vehicle for social commentary. Let's turn now to the theater, and George Bernard Shaw's witty and provocative play, Major Barbara. It's a brilliant clash of ideas about morality and wealth.
Shaw always loves an argument.
He does. The central conflict revolves around Barbara, a major in the Salvation Army dedicated to saving souls in poverty, and her estranged father, Andrew Undershaft, a hugely wealthy munitions manufacturer. Undershaft critiques traditional morality, famously asserting that poverty is the worst crime.
That's a controversial statement.
Extremely. It directly challenges traditional ideas of ethical integrity and financial success being mutually exclusive. Undershaft argues for morality as pragmatic. He claims wealth enables social good more effectively than idealistic principles alone. He can house his workers, pay them well, provide benefits, things Barbara's charity struggles to do.
So wealth is power for good.
That's his argument. Financial success grants influence, which can be wielded more effectively for social good, even if the source of the wealth, making weapons, is morally questionable. This forces a critique of hypocrisy, exposing society's double standards regarding where donations come from. Barbara is horrified to learn the Salvation Army accepts money from alcohol distillers and eventually from Undershaft himself.
It challenges the idea that ethical integrity can remain untainted by wealth.
Precisely. The play explores the theme of idealism versus pragmatism through Barbara's journey. She undergoes a transformation, eventually accepting the practical necessity of economic power in achieving social change, even if it means compromising her initial idealistic stance. A Marxist reading would focus intensely on these class dynamics and the power of capital.
And Shaw uses satire throughout.
Oh, constantly. Shaw's characteristic wit and irony are not just for laughs. They serve as a tool for critique, sharpening the play's examination of serious themes like poverty, capitalism, and faith. He forces the audience to question their own assumptions through humor and paradox.
A play designed to make you think, not just feel.
Classic Shaw, provocative and endlessly debatable.
Let's revisit a classic we touched on earlier, Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, but focus now on applying multiple lenses simultaneously, particularly that idea of intersectional oppression.
Yes, Jane Eyre is incredibly rich for this. We can clearly see both Marxist and feminist intersections at play. Jane's constant struggle for power throughout the novel is interpreted compellingly through both class and gender.
How does class play in?
Through her position as a poor orphan and later her economic dependency as a governess. This low social standing and lack of independent wealth severely limits her choices and makes her vulnerable to the whims of her employers, like Rochester. That's the Marxist lens focusing on economic power.
And the feminist lens.
That focuses on her resistance against patriarchal structures, from her abusive aunt to the oppressive Lowood School to Rochester's attempts to control her, and St. John Rivers' demands she sacrifice her identity for his mission. She constantly fights for her autonomy as a woman in a world run by men.
So the intersectional aspect is how these combine.
Exactly. The novel brilliantly reveals how Jane's identity as a poor woman compounds her oppression. Her lack of money makes her dependent, while her gender restricts her avenues for gaining independence or asserting herself. The two factors amplify each other, creating her specific challenging circumstances within Victorian society.
Can we layer psychoanalytic analysis on top too?
Absolutely. Jane's passionate outbursts, her red room trauma, her intense dreams, and her powerful, almost magnetic attraction to the brooding, troubled Rochester all invite psychoanalytic interpretation. They arguably reveal her unconscious desire for autonomy and love, her repressed anger and her internal conflicts. Her recurring dreams, for example, of children or burning houses, symbolize these desires and anxieties about connection, destruction, and entrapment.
So using multiple lenses gives a much richer picture of her struggles and motivations.
Definitely. No single theory captures everything, but together they illuminate the complex web of social, economic, and psychological forces shaping Jane's experience. Let's apply a similar multi-lens approach to another classic, Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter. This novel is fascinating for deconstruction and psychoanalysis.
The Scarlet A itself seems ripe for interpretation.
Incredibly so. A deconstructionist reading would challenge the seemingly stable, binary oppositions the Puritan community tries to impose, particularly sin versus virtue, punishment versus redemption.
How does the A challenge that?
Esther Prynne is forced to wear the scarlet A as a mark of her adultery, a symbol of sin. But as the narrative unfolds, the meaning of the A begins to shift. Some townspeople reinterpret it to mean Abel because of her strength and charity, or even angel. This evolution blurring the sin-virtue divide and undermining Puritan absolutism. The fixed meaning deconstructs itself.
The meaning isn't stable.
Not at all. It becomes fluid, contested, showing the inadequacy of rigid moral labels. Now let's add a psychoanalytic analysis.
Okay.
From this perspective, the scarlet A can be interpreted psychologically. It's not just a social marker, but perhaps a symbol of repressed passion and guilt. Hester's own, Dimsdale's hidden guilt, and even the community's repressed desires projected onto her. Dimsdale physically clutching his chest, where an A might be imagined, is a classic psychoanalytic symptom of internalized guilt manifesting physically.
And Pearl the child.
Pearl herself can be seen psychoanalytically as the living embodiment of the repressed secret, a constant, uncanny reminder of the passionate act that society condemns. Her intuitive, almost supernatural insights often pierce the hypocrisy around her.
So again, combining deconstruction's focus on unstable meaning with psychoanalysis's look at repression gives a deeper reading.
Yes, it shows how societal judgments and internal psychological states are deeply intertwined and reflected in the novel's central symbol.
Let's turn to another landmark of theater, Henrik Ibsen's A Doll's House. This play caused quite a stir in its time, didn't it? Especially regarding female agency and societal constraints.
A massive stir. It's a cornerstone text for feminist literary theory. The play meticulously dissects the gendered power dynamics within the seemingly happy marriage of Nora and Torvald Helmer.
How are those dynamics shown?
Nora's interactions with her husband Torvald are shaped by patriarchal expectations of female subservience. He treats her condescendingly, calling her his little skylark or squirrel, emphasizing her perceived helplessness and dependence. Her initial role as a doll in a doll's house perfectly reflects societal expectations of women as decorative, obedient, and childlike.
But she has a secret.
Yes, the secret loan she took out illegally to save Torvald's life shows she has acted decisively. But even that action was constrained by laws preventing women from financial autonomy. The drama unfolds as this secret threatens to emerge.
Her rebellion at the end is the key moment for female agency then.
Absolutely. Her eventual rebellion leaving her husband and children challenges this dynamic profoundly. The famous slamming of the door at the end signifies her rejection of the doll's house. It exposes the suffocating constraints of her role as a wife and mother in that specific late 19th century bourgeois society.
Why was it so shocking at the time?
Because it directly challenged the sacred institution of marriage and a woman's prescribed role within it. For Nora to prioritize her own self-discovery, her need to become a fully realized human being over her duties as wife and mother was radical and deeply unsettling to contemporary audiences. A new historicist lens highlights just how revolutionary this ending was against the backdrop of Victorian social norms.
It forced people to question assumptions about gender roles they took for granted.
Precisely. A powerful example of theater confronting societal norms head-on. And finally, let's return to Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, which we discussed earlier. But let's really focus on the disruptions of colonialism using specific theoretical lenses.
It feels like postcolonial theory is the essential starting point here.
Indispensable. The novel masterfully examines how colonialism disrupts indigenous identities, imposing Western values while marginalizing native cultures. It's a foundational text in postcolonial studies.
How does it show the impact on cultural identity?
Through the central character, Okonkwo. He grapples with the erosion of his cultural identity. As the British colonial administration and Christian missionaries arrive in his Igbo village, Umofia, he sees his traditions, his religion, his status, everything that defines him and his society being undermined and threatened.
The power dynamics are stark.
Extremely. The arrival of British authority represents a power dynamic where Western civilization, religion, and law are privileged over indigenous systems. The district commissioner at the end, planning to write a paragraph about Okonkwo in his book titled The Pacification of the Primitive Tribes of the Lower Niger, perfectly encapsulates this arrogant, dismissive colonial mindset.
But there's also hybridity. Not everyone resists like Okonkwo.
Right. Okonkwo's son, Onwoye, converts to Christianity. His conversion can be seen as forming a hybrid Igbo-Christian identity, representing the complex ways individuals and cultures respond to colonial influence, not just resistance, but sometimes adaptation, syncretism, or finding something appealing in the new ways, even if it means breaking with the old.
And we mentioned the eco-criticism and post-colonialism link before. Can we elaborate?
Yes. The British colonization of Igbo land disrupts traditional ecological practices and relationships with the land, which were deeply tied to Igbo spirituality and social structure. The imposition of colonial courts, cash crops, and new land use patterns illustrates environmental injustice as a legacy of colonialism. Control over the land was central to colonial power.
So the falling apart is social, cultural, personal, and even ecological.
Exactly. Achebe shows the multifaceted, devastating impact of colonialism, making it clear why understanding this historical context through lenses like postcolonial theory and new historicism is absolutely crucial for grasping the novel's enduring power. #outro.
Wow, what an absolute fascinating journey we've been on today. We started by trying to pin down what really makes literature, literate.
Moving beyond just words on a page.
Exactly. Then we explored why digging deeper, why critiquing is such a vital process, not just judging, but truly engaging.
Unlocking those layers of meaning.
And then we dove into that amazing toolkit of literary theories. Formalism, structuralism, deconstruction, reader response, psychoanalytic, Marxist, feminist, African-American studies, new historicism, eco-criticism, Asian literary perspectives.
A lot of different lenses.
So many lenses, each one offering a unique way to see, a unique way to understand. And finally, we brought these theories to life, seeing them illuminate incredible works by Walker, Twain, Orwell, Hughes, Woolf, Yeats, Wordsworth, Perejat, Bukes, Shaw, Bronte, Hawthorne, Ibsen, Achebe.
It's been an incredible deep dive, and my hope really is that you, our listeners, now see these aren't just dry academic exercises.
No, not at all.
These are powerful tools that allow you to engage more deeply, more thoughtfully with any text you encounter. They help uncover hidden meanings, challenge assumptions, and connect the world of the book to the broader human experience, past and present.
They really empower you to become a more insightful, maybe more empathetic, and certainly more critically aware reader.
That's the goal, to enrich your reading and maybe even how you see the world.
And that leads us perfectly to our final provocative thought for you to carry forward from this deep dive.
Okay.
If literature, as we've discussed, often holds a mirror up to life, reflecting its complexities, its struggles, its beauty, what lenses are you now using, perhaps unconsciously or now more consciously, to critique the texts of your own experiences? Think about your news feeds, the movies you watch, the political narratives swirling around you, even the stories you tell yourself about your own life.
That's a great point. Applying these critical skills beyond the page.
Exactly. What frameworks are shaping your understanding of the world? Keep asking those questions, keep digging beneath the surface, and keep engaging with the rich, complex tapestry of stories, literary and otherwise, all around you.
Keep that curiosity alive.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.